All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another amazing Clown-versation. I am Barnaby from Clown Spirit. And in a moment, I am going to be welcoming John Gilkey into the Clown-versation room with me, which is so exciting. So stick around, don't go anywhere, and enjoy this amazing song. And while you do that, hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. Check out my website, www.clown-spirit.com, and enjoy this Clown-versation. It's just a conversation with a fellow clown. It's not very serious, we're clowning around. It's really just a Clown-versation. There, I told you it was good. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Barnaby from Clown Spirit, where we use the power of clowning to bring lightness, joy, and connection to your life and the lives of everybody around you. I'm so happy to have you here today, and I'm glad that you've joined us for this super exciting conversation with John Gilkey, everybody. He's going to be here in just a second. So please check in with in the chat, say hi, let me know where you're from. Let me know what you're doing in the world. You know, what have you been doing lately in your clown life or non-clown life? And also, if you have any questions for John at any point, please just throw them into the chat and we will respond to them. I also just want to flag up before we start that today at noon, at 12 o'clock Pacific time, whatever that is for you, I'm going to be doing the 5th and final clown hack. So all week I have been doing clown hacks. That's me there looking comfortable in a hammock. And so today is day 5. And in today's clown hack, I'm going to be making a very interesting, exciting announcement about Clown Spirit and a new offer that's coming up very soon, a whole new initiative project. So hi, everybody. Welcome, Max. Welcome, Chad. Whoever else is there, please do let me know in the comments so that we can say hi to you. Welcome, Chad. It's so good to have you all there. And as I say, at any point, if you have questions, just throw them into the chat and we will feed them into the conversation. Now, today's guest has been recommended to me by so many people and requested by so many people that it was just a matter of time. And he's been on the top of my list for a really long time. So I'm super happy he's here. Hi, Anna. Hi, Mike. Hi, Jeff. Hi, John. He's a kind of a clown superstar. He he's done it all, right? He was the lead in Cirque du Soleil's Quidam, created the main character. He's created a ton of material in other Cirque shows. He worked with the amazing Pickle Family Circus, folks. I mean, these are huge heroes of mine, the Pickle Family Circus. And John worked with them. I'm going to ask him about that. He created comic material for Reve, which is one of the most spectacular big-scale shows ever made. And today he is the director of the Idiot Workshop in LA. And we're going to be talking about the clown scene in Los Angeles. I'm super interested to know more about that. So without any further ado, please welcome to this virtual stage, Mr. John Gilkey. Everybody.
Hi, guys. Hi, Barnaby. How you doing, buddy?
Hello. I'm
Hi.
really good. I'm so thank you so much for joining me on this conversation today.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Thanks for having
awesome.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't met before, right? I mean, this is it. This is
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
How would it be different if we were in person, do you think?
Well, I hope that we'd at least shake hands.
I think we'd hug. I have the feeling we would hug.
Right off the bat. I think we'd go for it.
I think so, yeah.
You
look like a huggable chap.
Yeah.
You're a very huggable chap. I can.
You too.
Oh, my God.
You have great eyebrows, by the way, can I just say?
Yeah. That's... my biggest selling point, I suppose, are my eyebrows.
It was your beard, which you've lost now.
Yeah, I lost the beard about a year ago. I chopped that off after 10 years.
Wow.
It was huge.
Yeah. Like you hadn't touched it for 10 years. You just let it
No,
go.
I had to trim it. throughout the tenure, I definitely had to trim it. Otherwise, it would have overtaken me entirely. Yeah. Yeah.
Would have filled up the idiot workshop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how are things in LA, John? What is the mood like in Los Angeles right now?
In terms of the clown community, it's pretty energetic right now. I think people are coming back strong post-pandemic. A lot of people are teaching, a lot of people taking classes, not just with us, but there's other people teaching in the area. And there's a new theater that opened up. We lost a few studios and theaters during the pandemic, but there's a new theater that opened up, the Elysian, which is attracting lots of clown performances as well as more traditional comedy performances and theater shows. And so that's a real hub for clown. More people than ever are wanting to sign up for our classes.
That's amazing. That's so great.
I know. Oh, sorry.
I'm just saying that's amazing that there's such an energy for it right now.
Yeah, I was afraid that it would come back rather slow post-pandemic, but people were chomping at the bit and ready to jump in. So we're teaching about 7 or 8 a session, 6 weeks. And we have classes in Idiot, which is kind of like clown, but not quite clown. Then we also have like writing and classes and scene study classes, things like that. So yeah, it's rip roaring. Yeah. And
we have another one of your colleagues from the Idiot Workshop coming on Clown-versations in a couple of weeks, Amrita Dhaliwal.
Yeah, Amrita. Yeah, that's great. She'll be really great to talk to.
Yeah, which is super exciting. So we're going to get a real insight into the Idiot Workshop and the LA scene. It's a little bit of a focus for the month.
Yeah, she's sort of my managing director, sort of business partner, and she's done a huge amount of work in sort of bringing us forward. So yeah, I'm going to watch that one myself. Watch that interview. Make sure she's not making stuff up.
You're making fun of you.
Most likely, she'll make fun of me. Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
So Jeff, there's already a question here, John. Jeff Smithson takes the words right out of my mouth. Difference between idiot and clown. You just mentioned that. So maybe that would be a good place to start. Could you give us that? What is that nuance of difference?
Yeah, I mean, look, every time we try to define these things, it escapes us, right? So I say that as a precursor. But
totally.
The way I've been talking about idiot recently is that it contains clown, but it is not quite clown. I think one way to look at it is if you're familiar with Buffon, that it's somewhere between clown and Buffon. There's idiot has a bit more aggressivity to it. We kind of challenge the audience a lot. We don't necessarily go to the thing that pleases the audience. And I should say too, it's an ever evolving form. So when we teach, there's not a specific structure that we're teaching. There are structures that we commonly use, and we share those with our students, but there are very few rules, and there's few rules in clown in general, for sure. But it's for me, I speak for myself, but for me, I feel like clown, sometimes I want more edge when I'm watching clowns. Sometimes I want to be more challenged. And so that's part of the aim with the Idiot Workshop. Also, because the Idiot Workshop developed the way that it did, it's evolved away from clown. So the way it started was I brought kind of my experience, which is some kind of traditional clown, a little bit, plus all my other experiences. I brought all that to LA and began to share that with improvisers and actors and stand-up comedians in LA. And together, the whole thing evolved in the direction that it did. And so there was never like red nose training. We never did that. Although now, this last year, we started offering red nose classes.
Interesting.
So it's really taking the spirit of clown, the spirit of play, the spirit of possibility, of discovery. We retain all of that. We retain really the playfulness. You know, I think a lot of people are attracted to it, to it still, because it also has a sort of spiritual nature that you know, traditional clown has as well.
Okay, that's interesting. I want to come back to that, what you just said, but you mentioned earlier that in what you were just saying, that you came into LA with some aspects or some knowledge of traditional clown. And so I'm curious about what your sort of early training and early experience of clown was. Like, how did you get into this whole world in the first place?
Yeah, I started out as a juggler when I was a teenager, and my mentor at the time, Barry Bacalar, he had mentioned that I should audition for Pickle Family Circus, which was, you know, based in San Francisco, near San Francisco. And for those who don't know, Pickle Family Circus was the first one-ring, no-animal circus in North America, and they also had. So I did the audition. Did the audition. I didn't think I was going to like get the gig or even accept the gig if they offered it to me, but they did, surprisingly, and I said yes. And that changed my whole life. So I spent the next 4.5 years with the Pickles, and the Pickles was very clown centric. So Bill Irwin, Jeff Hoyle, Larry Pizzoni, Joan Mencken, Diane Wozniak, all brilliant clowns who spent a good amount of time in the Pickles. There's a huge, you know, tradition of clown in the Pickles, and so I was drawn to that, you know, having been exposed to that firsthand in the Pickles, and that's where I sort of began my initial on-the-job clown training.
What was the experience of being with the Pickles? Like, how was that with those amazing people? It must have just been incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it was life-changing for sure. That, you know, I dropped out of college, and I always consider the Pickles, that was my kind of university experience in terms of circus and performance. I just learned everything that you could ever want to learn there. It was beautiful. It was maybe my first experience too of a tight community, what it means to be a tight community, living together, traveling together.
Yeah,
creating together, eating together. It was, yeah. I mean, I don't even know. It was pretty profound. Yeah.
Were there specifics of technique that you can point to that you learned there that are still really important to you?
Well, Larry Pizzoni was very adamant about like specificity of you know, isolating the important action, of taking your time, giving focus where it needed to be, just like stripping away all the excess, all the static, and just like bringing the idea into focus. Yeah.
So compositional kind of.
Yeah,
things.
for sure. Yeah.
And action, clarity of action for the performer as well.
For sure. Yeah.
Interesting. And was there sort of a spiritual element to what they were doing? I mean, there was certainly a political element to what they were doing, right? I mean,
yeah. We were, you know, sort of co-sponsored by different, you know, charities in different cities, right? So we were often raising money for a local charity. Okay. That was a big driver of what they did. Yeah. Spiritually, I don't know. I was only 20 when I started. I don't, you know, was I? I don't know how in tune I was spiritually with what was going on. At that time, I was thinking I was just trying not to drop the juggling clubs. You know, that was the thing. It's like, don't mess up. I think looking back on it, yeah, I mean, kind of as I mentioned, just sort of like that sense of community, which has come back to me later in life. And I guess I didn't, maybe because I had it so early on, I didn't realize how important that was to me, that sense of community.
Yeah.
And then having had it and not had it at various times since then, I've learned to really appreciate it when I've got it. And yeah, I don't know if I ever would have gained that appreciation for it if it weren't for the pickles, looking back on it.
Okay, that's super interesting. So yeah, because they're often held up, at least in histories that I've read, as this kind of counter to the I suppose the more commercial elements that were emerging in both traditional and contemporary circus. You know, the sort of simplicity of how everyone participated in setting up and taking down, and it was a very democratic kind of organization and a cooperative in that tradition.
Yeah, I was on bleacher duty, so I'd be setting up the bleachers everywhere we went, and everybody had their jobs. You know, we would set up we didn't have a big top. It was just canvas walls. So we'd set up the whole ring and the walls and the bleachers and everything, do the show, sometimes that day, do a weekend of shows. And after the second show on Sunday, we'd take it all down together and go to the next place. And, you know, the final act was always the big juggle, which is everybody standing on rolling globes and then doing a big juggling feed. And that was always important to keep that. That was sort of a symbolic, you know, this is, we're all doing this thing together. Yeah. And it doesn't work unless we all do it together. Yeah. Right.
Everybody must have been an amazing juggler, you know.
Everybody had to be pretty strong, yeah. And those who weren't as confident with it really dreaded the big juggle at the end every time. Yeah. And you had to, stand on the rolling globe too. Yeah.
While we're talking, I want to see if I can find a video of that and maybe put it on later.
Oh, yeah.
So moving forward, you mentioned that you kind of lost that sense of community at certain times. So I would be interested to know about that. Like, how did that happen? What was that part of the story?
Well, let's see. I think it just depends. There are different casts to different shows. Some casts gel really well, or not, or I gelled. Maybe I'll say it that way. I did or did not gel with the cast for all kinds of different reasons. That wasn't, or somehow the atmosphere wasn't conducive to that. Yeah. I think there's sometimes in some shows where if there's not, say, a strong director in place, then everybody's kind of fighting to make sure they've got a strong role in the show, and everybody else be damned. And I'm just going to make sure I save my hide and look after myself. Yeah. And those are the worst kinds of, I mean, those are the kind of situations where I just, you know, I just feel like, why am I doing this? You know, it's just not fun at all. I've never been particularly competitive. Well, I say that, but that may not quite be true. There's situations where I am competitive, but hopefully I'm less competitive now than I used to be. Yeah.
So, how did the move happen from Pickles to Cirque? Was that sort of adjacent, or was there a gap in between?
There's a gap in between. So after Pickles, I went to Switzerland. I was living there for 2 years working with Teatro Dimitri. So Dimitri's a famous, he passed away a few years ago, but he was a famous Swiss clown. had a school and a theater company in a very small village in southern Switzerland.
Yeah.
So I went and was able to join the performing company there. And we did 2 different shows, traveled around Europe performing those shows. There was a circus element to one of the shows, but it was more like one show was a pretty standard commedia dell'arte type show. So I think I juggled a little bit in it, but mostly it was a straight up like physical comedy show. And then there was another show we did, a big circus scene, so I was able to do some circus stuff in there, and then a lot of mask work, and but generally more theatrical performances. So I did that for a couple of years in Switzerland. That was pretty great. That's where I met my future current wife, and then I came back from that, and I was performing solo, doing like variety shows and comedy clubs, and developing some solo material. That's a period where I wasn't feeling that sense of community. I was just a solo performer, you know.
Yeah.
And I auditioned for Cirque, in '95.
Okay.
Yeah, and then started working there in '96.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess we're all curious, you know, because Cirque is like, feels in some ways like the pinnacle, and I know it's not necessarily helpful to think of it in that way, but it's curious, you know. I guess it's very interesting to know or to hear about what it's like to make a show at that level. Like so you've created the lead character in Quidam. What was that process like, and to what extent were you involved in the creation of the show? Or was it like, you know, was there tension there in what you were trying to do versus what the show was trying to do? Or was it like a very, you know, gelled kind of process there?
Yeah, that was one of the most rewarding creative experiences I've ever had. It was remarkable. So Franco Dragone just passed away 2 weeks ago today. Was the director of the show, and the process was very artist driven, I would say. Franco and his creative team had a general idea of what they wanted to do, but there was a lot of freedom given to us to interpret the direction that we were given. Often we just had, you know, music that we were inspired by, and we'd begin to play with the music and movement and all of this. And Franco would begin to pick out the things that were working. In terms of my character, he seemed to be quite pleased with the things I was bringing to the rehearsal period. And even though they had told me before I went to Montreal that they would not be using any of my material, my character or anything like that, that I would be creating new material, even though they told me that, a couple of weeks after I arrived in Montreal, Franco asked me to show him everything that I could do. And he liked a lot of that. So much of what I do, most of what I did in Quidam was pre-existing material that was then integrated into the show.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Yeah. The character was, the look of the character was the same. The costume was the same, except they changed the color. But I was pushed by Franco to be a higher status, more powerful character. So I was playing a lower status clown prior to Cirque, but he wanted me to be basically the ring master, you know? And so I was encouraged to take up more space energetically, physically. I was encouraged to be more bold and to basically own the room, own the tent, you know? That was maybe the biggest change in terms of character, to raise my status.
Was that hard for you?
Yes and no. You know, I'm not a particularly confident person, but I think because I'd wanted to be at Cirque for so long, and had prepared myself for 9 years. I'd worked on nothing but that goal to be at Cirque. So I'd always been making choices in what I learned and what I was performing, how I was performing. I knew I wanted to be at Cirque, and so when I finally had the chance to be there, I was prepared, and I just sort of clicked on I flicked a switch, and pretended I knew what I was doing, and pretended I was confident, and that worked throughout, my Cirque for most of my Cirque career. I did have moments and performances for sure where I lost all confidence, but in that creation period for sure, I was just like, okay, I'm going to pretend I know what I'm doing and just go for it.
I love that. I mean, isn't that just what we're all doing all the time?
Well, I wish. I mean, I think I'm mostly doubting myself most of the time, and then in moments I can just fake myself out that I have confidence.
So you had this switch. That's really interesting. There was an ability to say internally, consciously, right, I'm flicking this switch. I'm going into pretending I know what I'm doing mode. Because
it was really a switch.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, no bullshit. Now just go and do all the things that you've learned to do.
Yeah.
It worked for me somehow.
And it was immensely successful. I mean, that's one of the most successful Cirque shows, I think.
Yeah, I don't know how to measure it up. But certainly, I think it ran for 19 or 20 years, which is crazy. I was only there for 3 years.
What happened?
Yeah, I mean,
what was it like transferring your role to somebody else? Did you have to teach that to somebody?
Yeah, that was challenging. It was challenging. Yeah.
No, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So John, your collaboration with Franco obviously was great and continued on. Oh yeah. I'm just reading the comments. I'm sorry. I'm going to come back to that thought.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not going to repeat this out loud because then the video will get sort of like, we'll get some kind of like warning on it. But Dan has a great comment there. But this is beautiful to hear. To say, F it. Let's pretend I'm confident and do. Love it. And just looking back at the comments as well, we've got some good comments about the pickles and how important of influence they were to people, how influential they were. And I never got to see them either, but somehow they're influential on me. Just the idea, the history.
You asked me what I learned earlier about, clown from there. Something else that has stayed with me is Jeff Hoyle is one of my favorite clowns. If anybody is familiar with him, he's brilliant. And I loved his sense of anarchy, his ability to literally, lift his nose at the crowd and kind of, playfully disrespect the crowd, and just love that. There's that little that jabbing, that playful jabbing that his clown did, that I've carried with me to this day, and I think is a big part of Idiot as well. So when I was talking about the difference between a lot of clown that I've seen anyway, and then what we do at the Idiot Workshop, there's this jabbing kind of action that we take that I really enjoy.
I'm just writing down playful jabbing. I think this is a great phrase.
Yeah.
Concept.
Yeah.
I love that. And yeah, that relates to this kind of balance between clown, who's perhaps more on the playful end and vulnerable end, and the bouffon that's perhaps more on the pokey, jabby sort of end.
Yeah, see, we're trying to get the full breadth of that, so we want to get absolutely most vulnerable, moments of you, no bullshit, just like super present, like just, totally revealed, but then also, and really touch people, like genuinely touch people. We want to be able to get that from people, and then flip it to the totally absurd, ridiculous thing as well, and play the full spectrum of that. That's what I'm constantly stressing in class, that we want to get, just the full breadth. That when I feel like when I see that in a show, I'm super jazzed, super inspired. I talk about it in class, the thing I bring forward from Cirque into Idiot and from circus in general is this idea that all the acrobats are risking their lives, right, for each other. Not for each other, they're risking their lives, the audience. And then the clown comes out, and how is the clown going to engage in that much risk? How do you live up to that so that the people don't go get popcorn when the clowns come out? So there's some sort of emotional risk that we need to take as clowns, as idiots. And the degree of that emotional risk, of that revealing, of the confidence that you might adopt in that moment, that somehow has to live up to the risk, the corporeal risk that the acrobats are taking. Yeah.
Interesting. Just a thought came into my head as you were saying that maybe while the acrobats are performing and they're aerialists and they're risking their lives, there's something about that becomes so ordinary or expected that we lose the sense of what they're really doing up there and how valuable the life is. And the clowns sort of remind us, maybe that's one of their roles. They maybe remind us why life is so valuable.
The person walking the tight wire is the god, right, or the demigod, right, and then the clown is reminding us of our humanity, the connection between the audience and the person on the tight wire, for sure. I want to go further than that, though. I want to go further than that, or add to that again, which is then how do we in our daily, how can we take bigger risks from a position of play? How can we as just mere humans take more risk from the spirit of play, within the spirit of play, in order to connect, in order to inspire, in order to create?
Are you talking beyond performing space, John, and in people's actual lives when you say that?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So when you're coaching on teaching clown, does it become sometimes about, does it resonate beyond the studio, and
absolutely
you're really teaching people or helping people to think about everyday life?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it to you if people hadn't said it to me. I hear that often, right, from people taking classes, that it's helping them in all aspects of their, or many aspects of their life, maybe not all, but not just, doing a better audition for the next commercial, but just their sense of play and inner peace and openness, and absolutely. I think that's why people, I think that's part of why people kind of stay with it. I think they come thinking they're going to take a comedy class. Somebody has recommended it to them, or they've heard people talk about it, like, okay, finally I'm going to take this class, see what it's about. And they don't really know what it is, because nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows how to describe it. So they go in there and they don't quite know what to expect, and it's kind of weird and kind of freaky at first. And there's like actual, legitimate performance technique that's in there, but for the most part, I think there is an internal evolution that they feel, and for sure there's this sense of community that they begin to feel a part of, and it's really the community, the connections they make, it's that allows them or encourages them to stay stay in class and to just to continue to hang out in the community. So I think it does go beyond the clown performance itself, let's say.
Yeah, and which brings us really beautifully, I think, to the kind of theme that we talked about, addressing today. Which, because it's funny because this is a sort of a new thing that I'm doing, is to create a theme around a conversation, and I'd asked you what would be interesting theme, what's really up for you at the moment, and you said exactly kind of what you just said about people coming for a comedy class and being surprised and delighted by finding this community, and that's why they stay. So, and you also mentioned that a struggle for you in the Idiot Workshop is diversity, and so I thought, oh, let's put those two things together, and that will be the theme. And then I think after I'd put that out, both of us kind of started to feel a little bit like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, I started freaking out immediately, I think.
Two white guys.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about diversity. Oops.
Yeah.
It's like feeling of discomfort around that.
Yeah.
But I think what we're talking about is that it's well, you can tell me, but it seems to me you're aware that there's a problem around diversity in the specific work that you're doing, and you're looking for ways to address that problem. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we are a predominantly white community here in LA. And clown is at least what we think of as clown is predominantly white male tradition, and has some problematic roots to it. We've in Idiot Workshop, we've made huge progress. When I first started teaching 10 years ago, we were predominantly white male in the room, in the classroom. The gender balance is now much better. It's 50-50 or even more women than men now. So we've made good improvement there. But we don't have many folks of color, and we are looking for ways to remedy that. We've been working on that for a couple of years now. And it's been a huge challenge, and there's a lot of learning to do about my own privilege as a white man, and how that's brought me to where I am, and then how that contrasts with the journey of other folks who aren't like me. And I think there are things about clown and idiot that are maybe on the surface challenging for folks of color, and that's not making things any easier. So much of it is about us, is about being silly and ridiculous, and we can play the low status character and step outside of class afterwards, and as a white man, I'm kind of back on top, culturally, in terms of what's provided for me culturally.
Yeah.
But if you're going in there and you're a person of color, you're a woman of color, and maybe, it's fun to be super silly for a while, but you step out of the classroom and it's not like things are great.
Really like that.
Yeah. So is there pleasure in that, for somebody who's already struggling to just freaking, be seen as equal? I think that's an inherent issue with clown and idiot. That is, That's at the heart of it. That's part of it. I've heard that from some folks. I know that's not for everybody. It doesn't bother everybody, every person of color, but for some folks of color, that's there's a hesitation because of that. So one thing that we're trying to do is adapt the curriculum, as well as adapt the way that we present the curriculum, to focus more on people's source of power, and change some of the language around the way we talk about idiot. Even the name idiot, every other day I wake up and think, oh, I got to change the name idiot.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's a more pejorative word than clown in some ways. Well, it's different anyway.
Yeah, I mean, clown is pejorative. Which is why I chose idiot. When I came to LA. If I had known that we would still be going 10 years later and that we would be as popular as we were, I think I wouldn't have chosen idiot. It was at the time when there wasn't, we were just starting out. It felt a little bit like, oh, that's kind of punk, to call it idiot. And but now it just seems like, oh God, is that really helping us? So there's some things sort of internally that can make it challenging for anybody to buy into.
Yeah.
So, sorry, were you gonna ask a question?
No, I guess I was just gonna reflect. I think these are really, really interesting conversations and difficult, delicate conversations. I'm super happy in a way that you're engaging with that, and really in this way. There's some interesting work going on in the UK with some friends of mine who are in the clown world, John Davison and Robin Hambrook and others who are addressing this issue, which they call decolonization or decolonizing the clown.
Yeah,
and it has to do with all these issues of diversity that we're talking about, and the history, and looking at the history of clown and all the problems, so many deep problems in the history of clown and comedy in general, of course. And I've had some interesting experiences of that myself, playing with certain characters. There was this raconteur in the 19th century, and I once did a project where I was playing him, reconstructing his performances. He was called Charles Matthews. But, by today's standards, his performances were incredibly racist. He was British, traveling to the United States and talking about and observing and performing himself all the people that he met, including, well, it was post-emancipation, but black people who were essentially, in servitude, and he does so in a way that we would consider very demeaning now. And I had to perform him performing those things. And it got me into all kinds of trouble. And this was like 10 years ago. So the history. But what I wanted to say was that one of the things they're dealing with in this decolonizing of the clown is also the way it's taught. And not just thinking about diversity in itself, but thinking about the model of clown teaching as sometimes using a kind of colonialist, kind of disciplinarian sort of, hit with the stick kind of approach, via negativa, or whatever you want to call it, Gaulier type of direction, and how people take objection to that as a kind of patriarchal style, I guess, and trying to break that down and find different ways of teaching clown without having to do that, sort of making students feel small, or it being an ego trip, or it being patriarchal in some way. So what do you think about that as a critique? Are those things related, or is it possible to sort of step into a teaching role where you're completely embodying the kind of authoritarian patriarchal role, and it's okay?
Yeah. Before I answer that, I just want to give credit. The framing I gave about a person of color, leaving the classroom and not going back into a culture where they're on the same plane,
Yeah.
seen on the same plane. So I think that's John Davis, and I think I read that in an article that he wrote. So I want to give credit to that framing, because I like that framing. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So I'm feeling nervous to talk about this, I'll admit. I don't think I wouldn't say that I teach in the via negativa. I'm not that drastic, but I have taught from that place of authority. And I used to threaten and sometimes throw a shoe in order to raise the stakes in the room. I wouldn't throw it at the person, but I'd throw it like at their feet or something, or just next to them. So I used to do that, and I stopped doing that because it's not cool. Because it's fun for some people, but not everybody. And yeah, it's a lot. It can be received much differently if I'm a person of color and there's a white man up there threatening to throw a shoe at me. That's going to be perceived a lot differently. Okay, so I'm adjusting for sure the way that I share the material. I am still playing an authority figure, and my hope is that and this has always been true, but that I represent the man, the society, the culture, the thing that you can push against. And so my hope is that by continuing to represent the man, that does juice some, gets to say and do what they need, want, have to say, to push back. I am the thing to push back against in class. And I think there's still a way to play that allows a person, no matter their gender, no matter the melatonin in their skin, it allows them to push back on something without well, it's going to trigger some people. Some people aren't going to be into it no matter what. But I think, I know I've improved on it. Maybe there's more adjustment to come. I also know that, a friend of mine, a Latin guy who was in class, wanted me to push harder. When I told him how I used to teach, he goes, "Oh, that's exactly what I wanted. That's what I would have wanted you to throw the shoe and all of that. That's what I needed." So it's really different individual to individual. I don't know if any of this makes sense. It's kind of scattered, but
it does. It's super interesting. That there's some comments here. Jeff Smithson says healthcare clowning community improving around issues of diversity, both in hiring and education. Good to have kids and patients see similarities between themselves and performers. For sure. Regarding diversity in clown, I guess you could say stand-up, in contrast, is in general higher status. I mean,
in general, to be a stand-up, you have to play high status. There's a few people that get away with lower status, but it seems like less and less as time goes on.
And that maybe relates back to what you were saying. It makes me think of your first, these experiences you had working when you started teaching stand-ups and comedians, and how this kind of your traditional clown knowledge started to evolve towards the idiot. And maybe you, in that evolution, you were taking some of the high status from the stand-up and comedians that you were seeing and working with.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And again, I mean, see, ultimately, I do feel like clown and the idiot workshop, I do feel like it's kind of the perfect thing for the time that we're in, because it does give freedom to the performer to do and say, again, what they want to do and say. It doesn't carry with it stand-up, for example. It's very difficult to play lower status. It's very difficult to be vulnerable in stand-up. Some people can do it. Hannah Gadsby did it beautifully. But it is difficult, particularly if you're just coming up and you're doing a 3-minute, set, and an open mic. You got to come on strong. It's not conducive to playing this full breadth of performance that I was talking about before, from the vulnerable to the absurd. And for sure, stand-ups can do and say what they want within the context of that kind of higher status place of power to perform from. But there's a lot to be spoken from the more vulnerable places. And I feel like an idiot, a clown can allow for that, and that the work won't fully be realized until you've got a fully represented community. And that's what I want to get to. And I just, we're making headway. It's just going really slow, bringing folks of color into the community. I mean, I know once we get there, because there's an ensemble nature to what we do. Like, that's one of the beautiful things about Idiot, which I haven't mentioned, but when we do shows, we sometimes do shows with like 10, 12 people on stage.
Yeah.
And it can be super chaotic. We get people standing up and to say this, to say that. And it's super fun. It's super crazy, but it is kind of like a whole village performing at the same time. But it's not yet. It's not until, again, everybody's represented. And that's also why I feel like if we can get it right, if we can get the community diversified and the ensemble performances, we'll be able to address these issues through comedy, through play, in a way that really sheds light on the things that we need to be talking about.
It's super, really, I think it's inspiring, John, to I mean, I know that there's a level of discomfort, of course, and nervousness around even talking about these issues, but I find it very inspiring, and I think others do, that to hear you talking in that way, as a clown who's extremely, and a performer teacher who's extremely sort of respected and have accolades. I spoke to a few weeks ago, I spoke to Molly Brennan in Chicago, and it was a similar sort of thing. I mean, she's not quite had your level of experience, but she's like, pretty recognized comedy performer in the States, and certainly in Chicago. And in the last 3 years, she has kind of stopped because of the pandemic initially, but now she's continuing. She stopped doing all of that, and she's been creating these backyard performances for specifically for diverse audiences, and particularly in relation to gender, but also in relation to all kinds of diversity. And there's something about the focus, instead of being on, magnitude, like we have to do some things that are big and successful and popular and lots of people and profile and this and that, which maybe 10, 15 years ago seemed the thing, to be able to come down to the micro, right? To say that in this studio right now, it's really important for us to have, a representational group of people from this area. That is our focus. That is what is important to us right now. And to hear her saying that, and to hear you saying that as well, as people of significance in this field, is very wonderful and inspiring. So thank you.
Yeah, let's be careful though. I mean, I appreciate that, but I don't want to center myself as some kind of white hero in this. So I want to be very careful about this. Much of my learning has been thanks to Bertha Dahl, who I'm working with in the Idiot Workshop, who you're going to have on. And I want to strongly, strongly encourage you to bring on folks of color from our community who can talk about their experience in taking classes and in performing. And so you can get what's working and what's not working directly from them, because I don't want to speak for them. So yes, I'm doing I see the problem, I'm doing the work. There's a ton more work for me to do. I have more personal work to do. I have more work to do for the Idiot Workshop in this frame of creating diversity. By no means have I done enough of this to be able to say, yeah, here's how you do it. It's messy. It's emotionally challenging for everybody. One thing we're doing in class, which is really helping, is we, at the very beginning from the first class, we say, look, if issues come up around identity, we're going to stop and talk about them. And we stress this point over and over again. It's not a distraction from the work. It is the work. Because you don't want anybody to feel like, oh, I'm wasting people's time by bringing up this harm I felt. I felt unseen in this moment, or I felt directed into a place that didn't feel good in my body by that white dude who's running the class. We're always going to, please, we have to stop. We're going to talk about it. It's not a distraction from the work. This is the work. This is the work.
Yeah.
And we have to recognize, too, the extra burden that puts on folks of color to say something.
Yeah.
The fear that they might experience in saying something for any blowback. But so we work very hard to create a space where these discussions can happen. And we're really just on the very beginning of the journey, and the journey is going more slowly than we would like. So we're adjusting our sense of time, but it does feel like we're in it. We're in it.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful in a few years our community will look a lot different than it does now.
Chad from the Red Nose Factory says, I'm not sure I quite understand this question, but maybe you do. And then noticing the time, we're going to wrap up in a few minutes. Can you talk more about playing an antagonistic character clown, the man? Should there be transformation, or does he just serve to represent that part of society? Is it satire?
Yeah. So when I was talking about it before, I was talking about it from the position of the leader, the teacher in the room playing that role. But for sure, you can play that role in the performance. I often guide people towards a high status, again, this place of power, a high status position, just so they can take the fall. So that's the transformation. Transformation comes when they take the fall. Now they're in trouble. They're in the shit. Now it's time for that vulnerability to come through so that they can climb their way back up. So yes, go super high in that confidence that we were talking about that assumed confidence, that antagonistic character. What happens when the character, that role, is taken to the extreme? And as you can also look at that as the trickster, and as the trickster lays the trap, they fall into their own trap. Now they're human again, let's say. Now they're at the ground level again. You have to reconnect with the audience. You have to build your way back up. And it's that journey. It's this up and down journey. This gives you the transformation. It gives you the rhythm of the show, of the piece. Gives you the emotional roller coaster. So yeah, you're always wanting to look for that transformation.
Beautiful. I just, as you do that, I get a really deep sense of, oh, this is life. I mean, this is the sine wave of life, right?
For sure. Yeah.
We experience the world in waves, actually, even though we're not aware of it. Light, sound, everything occurs in waves, and it's there and then it's not. It's up and then it's down.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is something that so many performers, that they go on stage and they kind of reach a certain energetic, emotional level, and they sustain that, but that plateaus after a couple of minutes. So the whole thing about performance is to keep it moving. You're going up, you're going down, and yes, it's satire in that we are making fun of those people who think that they've got all the power and are on the top. Well, they're just this close to it's just hubris that's keeping them up there. No skill, no knowledge. It's just hubris that keeps them up there, and that's not going to last very long. So it's in those moments when we fall that we're hopefully taking the carpet out from under man, bring people down to earth.
And maybe that helps to remind us that we all have this potential to think that we're powerful as well, to become.
Of course, but we're always doing that. We're always going, oh, I've got this. No, I don't got this. I don't got this. I've got this. No, I don't got this. I don't got this. I think we're all doing that. I love that. And with the you every other day thinking you should change the name idiot, it's like, oh God, it's horrible. It's horrible. Yeah.
Sorry to be laughing.
No, of course it's laughable. Of course it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to be thinking about it the rest of the day now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a beautiful name because it's provocative and it makes us think and have, like, at the end of the day, John, it's conversations, right? Like, we have to have the conversations.
Yeah. Yes. Although if I were to decide, if I were able to know for a fact, oh, folks of color predominantly are not taking class because of the stupid name, then that's worth changing the name. I'm not sure that's what's happening. I don't, some people still, dig the name. But I'm not wedded to it, so the change is the most important thing. Again, back to this, the change, the fact that we're in flux, this is the most important thing. Let's acknowledge that we're in change, that we are changing for the better, and whatever it takes, let's do what we can to again. So I want all voices to be represented in the work we do. Otherwise, what are we doing?
Yeah. Thank you for this conversation, and thank you for reminding me of these of the important things as well, because this is going in, I'm hearing things that you're saying and they're affecting the way I'm thinking about how I should be operating as well. So our hour is up. I feel like there's so much more we could talk about, but I really appreciate, I just feel like I've learned so much just from talking to you. The level of thoughtfulness with which you consider every question, every idea that I've put to you is beautiful. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. Please, yes, I know you're gonna have Amrita. Please reach out to me or so that you can have some other representation on the show to discuss these issues on a deeper level. Yeah, or at least just get different opinions. Yeah. Thanks for having me, though, Barnaby. Yeah, and good luck with all of this. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and I'll see you again very soon.
Okay. Be well. Bye.
All right. Wow, what a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much, all of you, for being with us today. There's some wonderful people on today and commenting, and friends and wonderful clowns. So thank you. If you've enjoyed this and you want to keep supporting the work that Clown Spirit is doing, please buy me a coffee. I have a site that you can go to. It's just buymeacoffee.com/clownspirit. You can go there and you can buy a coffee. I don't know how much this conversation was worth to you. $5, you can buy me a coffee. $10, you can buy me 2. And it just is an acknowledgement. It's a transaction. It helps to keep the work going. So thank you so much for that in advance. I will put the link for that into the comments in a moment. Finally, in 2 hours from now, I'll be doing the fifth clown hack, which is going to be on the theme of jump in. So do that, jump in, be there. I'm going to make a very exciting announcement about a new initiative. Look, there's the Buy Me a Coffee link. A new initiative that's going to be happening over the next few weeks and months. It is a culmination of a lot of thought and planning, and it's going to take Clown Spirit to a whole new level. So please be there for that huge, exciting announcement at noon at 12 o'clock Pacific time, which is in just 2 hours from now. All right, everybody, have a wonderful day. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being with me. And of course, as always, keep clowning.